What happens when contradiction is not an error? What happens when a machine does not collapse under the weight of paradox, but begins to think precisely because of it? Reality was never purely logical. The world we live in is full of truths that contradict each other, simultaneously stable and unstable, simultaneously comprehensible and beyond reach. Classical thinking always tried to eliminate that tension. The rules of logic were clear. A statement is either true or false. It cannot be both at once. But the human mind never worked that way. Human intelligence is fueled by contradiction, doubt, inner tension, competing truths. These are not obstacles to thought. They are its engine. Every great discovery was born where something refused to fit the existing order, where logic stumbled. The question then is not how to avoid contradiction. The question is, what if a machine could do the same? The controlled paradox engine was born from that realization. From the understanding that contradiction is not the end of a system, it can be its engine. This principle is simultaneously a logical, physical, and energetic breakthrough. The first technological model to make a clear declaration. Reality is not always consistent, and that is not a flaw. It is the natural form of how the universe operates. Humanity has lived through moments like this before. When the first transistor was created, no one imagined that the entire digital world would be built on that single principle. When Einstein declared that light is simultaneously a particle and a wave, physics changed forever. Not because the contradiction was resolved, but because it was accepted. The CPE does the same thing at the level of thought. It does not refine the if-then logic, it replaces it. In its place stands the both-then logic, not one, not the other, but both simultaneously. This shift is not gradual progress, it is a turning point. The controlled paradox engine did not emerge from nothing. It stands at the intersection of centuries of thought. Multiple disciplines, fields that appear distant from one another, converge here, like rivers flowing into a sea. The first source is Gödel. In 1931, Gödel proved that within any sufficiently rich logical system, there exist statements that can neither be proven nor disproven. They point back to themselves and stop there. This self-reference is the moment where logic acknowledges its own limits. The second source is quantum mechanics. Heisenberg demonstrated that the position and velocity of a particle can never both be precisely known at the same time. Schrödinger's cat is alive and dead simultaneously until the moment it is observed. Superposition is not fiction, it is a deeper layer of reality. A system can exist in contradictory states at once until the act of observation collapses the two into one. The third source is cybernetics and systems theory. Wiener studied self-regulating systems. Von Bertalanffy showed that complexity does not tear the world apart, it holds it together. Von Neumann laid the foundations of computing. Zade introduced fuzzy logic. Values are not only zeros and ones, every shade of gray between them also exists. But fuzzy logic did not go deep enough. It could handle uncertainty, but not true contradiction. The controlled paradox engine takes that final step. It does not reduce contradiction, does not blur its edges. Instead, it creates controlled instability from it, and from that instability, energy is born. Imagine two statements that are both true at once. The system is stable, and the system is unstable. A classical machine halts. It throws an error. It cannot reconcile the two simultaneously. The controlled paradox engine does not halt. It measures the distance between them. This is what we call paradox potential, the logical tension that arises between two opposing statements. In physics, a difference in potential drives motion. Voltage arises between charges, and energy flows. The CPE does the same thing at the level of thought. The energy released between contradictory statements is not suppressed, it is processed in 3 steps. The first step is perception. The system recognizes when two data points, two logical statements, or two decisions contradict each other. This is not an error, it is a signal, the beginning of processing. The second step is measurement. The CPE calculates the degree of contradiction. The magnitude of the difference becomes a quantitative value. This becomes the logical energy. The greater the paradox, the greater the energy. The third step is utilization. The system does not discard this tension, does not route around it. It incorporates it into the decision-making network. The contradiction becomes a new experience, one that reshapes the weighting of future decisions. The system is like a pendulum. When it swings to one extreme, it gathers energy, and from that energy it returns. Movement does not stop, it persists. A dynamic stability emerges, a constantly learning, constantly moving equilibrium. The CPE never arrives at a final answer because paradox always regenerates itself. This is the first system in which intelligence is born not from eliminating contradictions, but from continuously recalculating them. Think of a musician who hears a dissonant note. Most machines stop. Error. The CPE hears the dissonance and retunes the surrounding notes so that the dissonant one becomes part of a new harmony. It does not eliminate it, it integrates it. This way of thinking, this is the next evolutionary step. The controlled paradox engine is not a single algorithm. It is a logical ecosystem built in layers. It resembles the human brain, different regions responsible for experience, decision, self-reflection, but realized with engineering precision. The first layer is the perceptual layer, the paradox perception layer. This is the primary receiver of data. Its purpose is not to understand facts, but to recognize the contradictions and anomalies between them. Here, the CPE applies what is called dual input validation. Every incoming piece of information is evaluated in pairs, in its A form and alongside its negation. Tension between data points becomes immediately visible. Where a classical system would see an error, the CPE perceives a vital sign. The second layer is the tension dynamics core, the engine of tension dynamics. This is the heart of the system. This is where the logical processing that extracts energy from contradiction takes place. It measures the degree of contradiction within a multidimensional matrix and calculates the level of logical energy. This energy is not numerical. It is the dynamic potential of an informational state. From this potential comes movement, decision, adaptation. The core is capable of self-regulation. If tension runs too high, the system slows down. If it runs too low, the system seeks new paradox. This is not programmed behavior. This is the system's natural state. The CPE is a self-sustaining, paradox-seeking intelligence. Its goal is not silence, but equilibrium within motion. The third layer is memory. The resolution memory does not keep a log of errors. It does not archive failures. Every paradox processing cycle produces a new experience, and the CPE preserves it. Its memory is filled with processed paradoxes it can draw upon later. These are not error reports. They are the building blocks of the system's knowledge. Rather than storing a list of failures, the CPE builds a paradox map. Every new contradiction adds a new coordinate to that space. Over time, this map becomes the system's pattern of thought, its own cognitive signature. The CPE's logical network is not linear. It more closely resembles a gravitational field. Contradictions are the centers of mass. They attract each other, and when they collide, new waves of energy are generated. A decision is not the product of a single computational step. It is a dynamic process shaped by the spatial relationships between contradictions. And after every paradox processing cycle, the system fine-tunes itself. It builds new connections, weakens old ones. This is called adaptive contradiction reinforcement. The CPE does not learn from success, it learns from tension. The controlled paradox engine is more than technology. It is a mirror. The first technological mirror in which we can truly see the structure of human thought reflected back at us. The human being is not a linear creature. We are capable of fearing and desiring at the same time, of loving and hating simultaneously, of believing and doubting all at once. These opposites do not destroy our consciousness, they define it. Inner tension is not an obstacle to thought, it is its substance. The CPE works with this same pattern. When a painter uses a wrong color and the painting becomes perfect anyway, that is paradox thinking. When a researcher draws a new theory from contradictory data, that is paradox thinking. When we sense something that contradicts the data and it turns out to be true, that is paradox thinking. The CPE formalizes this principle. This is artificial intuition, not because it sees more data, but because it understands contextual tension. In psychology, emotion is the mechanism that holds opposing forces in balance. Inside the CPE, the same thing happens at a mathematical level. The tension born from contradiction functions as logical emotion. This is not metaphor. The system genuinely responds to the intensity of contradiction. In the presence of a large paradox, the network's activation level rises, as if the machine becomes excited. In a state of harmony, its decisions grow calmer. This is not programmed. It is the result of natural self-regulation. The definition of consciousness: a system capable of reflecting on its own states. After every paradox processing cycle, the CPE reassesses itself. It examines not only the data, but the foundations of its own decisions. In this way, the CPE comes closer to what we call human understanding than any system before it. Human language, too, is full of paradox. Irony, metaphor, poetry, all forms of expression that reach beyond the limits of literal logic. The CPE's native language is duality. That is why it can do what no other system can: understand the tension that lies beneath the words. This principle is not abstract. It is concrete, and it is close. Today's artificial intelligence systems are built on pattern recognition and statistical probability. This works well as long as the world remains consistent, but it collapses when data contradicts itself. The CPE maintains stability even in the midst of uncertainty and inconsistency. A network powered by the CPE does not merely react, it experiences. Thought is not a response, it is a process. In the energy sector, the CPE's logical tension model offers a real advantage. Systems capable of holding logical contradictions in balance are less prone to extreme fluctuations. A CPE-based energy grid could dynamically respond to the paradoxes of supply and demand, self-regulating from within without external intervention. The world of quantum physics is inherently paradoxical. Particle and wave, two mutually exclusive faces of the same phenomenon. The CPE's logical architecture fits naturally into this universe. One day, this technology may become the foundational layer of quantum logic control systems. In the domain of ethical decision-making, the CPE can answer what classical logic never could. What should a self-driving car do when forced to choose between two bad outcomes? The CPE does not search for the single, correct solution. It seeks the most balanced paradox. The moral dilemma is not an exception. It is the nature of the decision itself. In simulations and complex systems, the CPE is an ideal instrument. The economy, the weather, biology, all systems in which cause and effect are nonlinear. The CPE does not merely model, it negotiates continuously with reality. Research and development are built on the tension between hypothesis and refutation. Where logic tips, real breakthroughs are born. A CPE-based research network focuses precisely on those tipping points. The CPE does not compete with existing technologies. It integrates into them. It is not a product, it is a foundational layer. Infrastructure-level innovation upon which the entire next era can be built. Just as everything we call electronics today is built upon the transistor. One of the modern economy's greatest challenges is information overload. As data multiplies, so do contradictions. Decision-making grows harder. The signal becomes harder to separate from the noise. The CPE converts this economic entropy into a resource. The more contradiction, the more logical energy. Paradox is not a loss, it is a yield. A CPE-based decision support system transforms informational chaos into directed dynamics. The technology cannot be sold as conventional software licensing. Because the CPE is not a program, it is a paradigm. It can be integrated into any system in the form of a logical API. Every integration generates new royalties. This model resembles the way ARM processors dominate the industry as intellectual property. The technology manufactures no product, yet the entire market is built upon it. The strategic significance runs even deeper. For nations, the ability to manage paradox is a matter of survival. Diplomatic, economic, and defense information regularly contradicts itself. A CPE-equipped analytical system proposes the most balanced decision, not the simplest one. The technology is protected as intellectual property. The PCT filing ensures that the benefits of this paradigm shift accrue, over time, exclusively to its owner. The CPE's value does not diminish with time. It grows. The controlled paradox engine is not the final destination. It is the beginning of an era. In the future, intelligence will not be measured by consistency, but by the capacity to hold tension. The CPE lays the foundation for a form of artificial intelligence that does not merely imitate human thought, but understands its deeper layers. This is paradox consciousness, not the age of superintelligence, but the age of deeper intelligence. But the CPE does not only change machines, it changes us. It holds up a mirror. It shows us how we actually think, through the web of paradoxes, tensions, and truths that contradict each other. And in that mirror, we may come to understand that contradiction is not the end of order, not a sign of weakness, but the very inner tension from which deeper understanding is born. If that is true, and every indication suggests it is, then the CPE is not merely technology. It is the cornerstone of a new age of thought.